Hi everyone, and welcome back to Tony Tonkin Show. I'm going to talk about something which has been in the back of which has been present with me for a long time, and I haven't talked about it at this point for reasons which I don't quite understand myself, but I am today. And that issue is around Trump, the insurrection, the fact that this man is as crazy as they come, and that within the United States there is 1/3 of the population who still believe that he has something to offer. And whatever it is that he has to offer, I cannot quite see that. But we're finding at the moment through the January the 6th committee that there is a distinct case that needs to be made that this man needs to face a process which makes him accountable for his behaviour as well as the behaviour of his supporters on the 6th of January. Now, I think one of the primary problems that we have here is that there is a swath of people who, for whatever reason, believe that Trump is Christ incarnate, that he holds some sort of power and some sort of set of values that rest with their own values about what the United States, and particularly, I think, what democracy should look like. It scares me a little bit to think that someone like him can actually wield that sort of influence over a large number of the population. It appears to me that the issues with Trump are basically that he lies a lot, and that, in fact, all of the time, and that he set this country up for self-destruction, and that we're heading into what appears to be one of the most darkest days in American history. We know that as we've gone through the Nixon era and in the mid-60s and the eventual Watergate scandal that caused Nixon to leave, we also know that because of the situation back in the early 2000s, whenever it was, 1999 or whatever, when Al Gore was facing off against Bush, and that there was a very tight vote in Florida and that was contested, and that Al Gore, who was vice president at the time, actually declared the votes against himself for Bush because he didn't want a constitutional crisis. Yet here we have a man who is so steep in his own sense of importance and full of every narcissistic quality that we can imagine, who cannot accept defeat under any circumstances, and who is in effect prepared to destroy his own country as a result of his narcissistic behaviour. Now, Trump, to some extent, it appears, from the commission, knew that he didn't win this election, but he also believed that he could convince a certain number of people that the election was stolen from him. We know that it wasn't. We know after some 66 cases or whatever of appeals towards in federal court that they were all rejected except for one, and that the system itself was saying to him, look, you haven't won, but you need to get on with the task of handing over the power to the next president, and he just simply refused to do that. And as a result, he's created a situation which has meant that at the end of the day, hopefully, he will be held accountable for what he has done. And I'm hoping that the Justice Department in the US has the courage to be able to say to Trump and his followers and those people that were involved in the insurrection leading up to and including the actual day, I'm hoping that they, at some level, will be held accountable for what it is that transpired previously, on that day, and after that day. Because if we wish to have stable government, we need to have a system which firstly understands that the system is based on what the electorate want. Now, I can understand that we can feel very disappointed at the results of elections. We know here in Australia that there would be a lot of Liberal Party people that were very disappointed in the way the elections worked out. And we know that even under our system, the majority may not necessarily get the people that they want because of the structure of our system, because of the electorates and the number of people that get elected within those electorates, and that for some reason it just doesn't work out the way that we would like it to be. But this is the system. This is what we have, and sometimes in order to get what it is that you want, you need to make sure that you work harder. But the transfer of power is important for any democracy. And to have a person in a position like Trump to continually argue that it was stolen, and that we all acknowledge now how erroneous that is significant. And I'm hoping that I don't want you to think of the United States as a fallen system, but I do need to understand that. I just had a phone call and I should turn my phone off. I do understand that we need to make sure that we can change, or make sure to prevent us from having those sort of circumstances that happened in the US happen anywhere else in the world. There is an interesting article in the Saturday paper here in Australia, which I think needs to be discussed. And some of those issues are simply about, I told him that the stuff that was, so this is about, in the second hearing, the President, Bill Barr, who was really a Trump loyalist to some extent, he had said that the actual facts indicated, well, without dispute in fact, that Trump had lost the election. And that in reality, Trump was detached from reality, and that there were issues around Trump's mental well-being. There were even discussions, I think, around the 25th Amendment, which was removing a president where it was believed that he was incapable of performing his duties. And so that discussion clearly was had amongst some of the secretaries. That is, how would we define it? In Australia, that'd be ministers. So there were issues concerning Trump's mental well-being, and that it was obvious that he was getting advice from one group of people who it was believed were the normal group, and then he was getting advice from people like Giuliani, who was simply the crazy group, and those people who were interested in maintaining power for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the society or the community and the voters and the other people within the US that they represent. They were only interested in one thing, and that was what is their own self-interest. So they bought into Trump's notions about self-interest and what was important. And I think this is the important thing for us to understand about a democracy, is that it is not always about our own interests. And I want to highlight one issue around Liz Cheney, which I think needs to be acknowledged. We can see that Liz Cheney is someone that perhaps we would disagree with in policy most of the time, because she's conservative. There's nothing progressive about her. She has very little connection with people of low incomes, struggling Americans. She doesn't understand anything. She would be the last person in the world, for example, that'd be in favour of universal health care. So we know that politically she's not the best person to choose. But we need to acknowledge that even Liz Cheney has chosen to take a path which is about conforming to her own set of values about what is right and what is wrong. And she knows, and it is evident, that she'll probably lose her seat as a result of this choice that she's made. And I personally find that sad, because we actually need people, regardless of their political affiliation, regardless of which side of politics they may sit on, and even though we may disagree with them greatly, that if they have integrity and they're prepared to sacrifice their own better interests, then that person needs to be supported. And Liz Cheney is certainly one of those people. So it's interesting to watch what's happening in the US. I've become a little bit obsessed with it, I know. And I know that perhaps I could change. No, I can't. I'm not going to change anything. I just need to watch less of what's happening in the US. I'm watching a lot of it because I'm actually concerned about the way their democracy will manifest itself. I don't believe in American exceptionalism. I don't believe in anybody's exceptionalism for that matter, or that any particular country is the greatest country on earth. I don't think Australia is the greatest country on earth. I don't know enough about other countries to know that. I certainly know that the United States is not the greatest country on earth. They have so many faults. And also, we see that happening right now. It's almost like all the crap has risen to the surface as a result of Trump, and that we're now seeing it played out. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody in the US is shit, because they're not. There are lots of good people in the US, and there are lots of good people who are fighting against what is happening in relation to the to what happened on January the 6th. And they are working hard in order to make the changes that are necessary, because they recognise that their democracy is at risk. And if Trump gets away with this, it will be. If he's not found guilty, or at least tried for his behaviour and what happened on January the 6th, then their system is in trouble, big time, because no one, no matter who you are, no one should be exempt from facing consequences around behaviour that is criminal. So hopefully they will be able to work this out for themselves in the US. It makes interesting viewing. Whether or not these hearings are going to bring about a significant change in terms of the way people are viewing this or not remains to be seen. Whether it will affect the midterms, who knows. But at the end of the day, this is about keep making people accountable and letting people know. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what position you hold, you will be accountable, held accountable for your behaviour. And hopefully that is the same with Donald Trump. I look forward to the day that Trump is rolled out to court in a orange jumpsuit. I think that would be absolutely amazing, because it would indicate to everybody that even the greatest can fall. And we need to make sure that the system remains intact in the US and in other democracies as well. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.